And away we go. It's just me at the moment. Not sure if Eric and/or Risk are going to join. If not, well, it must go on. Netanyahu to propose full reoccupation of Gaza, Israeli media report. According to the Jerusalem Post, August 4th, 2025, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, ordered the full occupation of the Gaza Strip, including areas with hostages. Ceasefire talks reached an impasse as Hamas insisted on hundreds of aid trucks before returning to negotiations, prompting Netanyahu to consider military action. Humanitarian data show Hamas-run health minister reports at least 60,933 deaths in Gaza, while Volker Turk called Gaza's conditions heartbreaking and unbearable, while far-right ministers push the Israeli security establishment opposes ground incursions, and senior officials believe Hamas won't free the remaining 50 hostages without force. Future projections suggest analysts warn reoccupying Gaza risks many civilian casualties and could erode Israel's international legitimacy. That could happen. And as of this recording, I am absolutely certain I can look online, look at sources, people's thoughts and opinions on the situation on social media. I think whatever side people stand on, they will agree that whatever is going on in the Gaza Strip has been going on long enough, and it has to stop. And if it continues, it might as well that Israel may potentially be in hot water. Now, of course, Israel has been in hot water many times over the years, but I think now it has come to a point that a majority of global communities are likely to take stand against the Israeli government regarding what is going on in Gaza. Even that being the case, I still hope that there will be peaceful resolutions and there are solutions and all the problems that are ongoing are to be resolved. Once again, as of now, it's very unlikely that anything's going to be resolved. I think both sides are going to keep pushing forward. They're going to keep asking for their desired demands. And then eventually someone is going to have to step in, get something sorted, and then that is likely how the conflict or the genocide will end. There's no other way of describing it. I'm honestly outraged, but as of now, I can't stress that enough than I do right now. Because I've heard this situation, I heard this story so many times that I just feel numb just hearing about this. That's how bad it is. If there's nothing left to feel about a discussion, it is genuinely a massive concern. If there's nothing else, there's no new emotion to feel about whatever is going on right now. I'll just leave it at that. TikTokers forced to apologize by Putin after filming at depot hit by Ukraine. The video in question features Dasha Vladimirova and Karina Evgenieva, 19, filming themselves near the burning ruins of the Rosneft-Kubaneft oil depot near Sochi. Two young Russian influencers were arrested after posting a viral TikTok video this weekend showing them dancing and filming in front of a burning oil facility in the city of Adler, just south of Sochi, one of Russia's most iconic tourist destinations. The fire was the result of a Ukrainian drone strike. The video, which authorities said glamorized Ukraine's military success, sparked outrage in pro-Kremlin media circles and triggered a more than muscular response from local authorities. In this very short clip, the trio appears both relaxed and distant, with a popular track by Russian rapper and Sheeple, Crimson Dawn, serving as the soundtrack. The setting of this video is nothing short of spectacular, as behind it we can see imposing flames in the sky and a plume of black smoke coming from the targeted oil depot. The video uploaded to TikTok quickly set Russian social media ablaze and garnered hundreds of thousands of views before being removed. It took less than that for Russia's pro-Kremlin state media, which supports Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine, to strongly condemn this unpatriotic act. Analysts and talk show hosts called the video an act of moral treason and demanded not only arrest, but also a public apology and repentance. Shortly after the video was released, authorities launched a massive manhunt for the two TikTokers. Within days, Dasha Vladimirova and Karina Evgenieva were arrested by law enforcement. Authorities confirmed that the arrests took place in the Sochi region, not far from the site of the drone attack. According to several sources, the video reportedly infuriated high-ranking officials in Moscow because it showcased a successful Ukrainian strike, an image the Kremlin is aggressively trying to suppress on all of the country's social media platforms. So it's inevitably clear that the Kremlin, the Russian government, are certainly not liking this whatsoever. That is inevitably clear. And of course, any signs of Ukraine succeeding in this conflict, yeah, of course, Russian media are doing what they can to ensure that such stories like that does not get spread around social media. And it just shows that Russia is weak, and there's nothing that they can do about it. Even if it is the case, and then there are people looking at Russia seeing that there's nothing that they can do now, like it's over for them. Nothing is over. People may think it's over, but it's not. And even with the explosion, now I'm not going to say it's all set up. I am certainly not going to say that the cost of lives were at stake in this. No one, no one's life should be lost whatsoever under any circumstance. However, based off the explosion and whatever attention that got from people, it's very telling. If it's strong themes that really paint a picture for one side, of course that side in question will do whatever it can to ensure that message does not get spread about. So obvious, in my opinion. I don't know how it could be obvious than that, given what I've just read. But even then, even when there is a strain on the image of one side, that is not going to improve the situation any further. It's not going to convince one side or the other to actually get to the negotiation table and organize some kind of deal to ensure this doesn't happen again. I think no matter what publicity anyone gets, if their finances are still in check, then they can do whatever the heck they want. It's unfortunate. We should not live in a world like that, but that's how the world is right now. You can take all the heavy hits from the negative press. If somehow they manage to utilize that negative press for their own personal gain or use it to their own advantage, then maybe it won't be so bad after all. But I would not encourage that. It's gonna happen, but I would not encourage it. Especially if you're in the wrong. Especially if anyone's in the wrong. Well, I don't think I've read anything that says that anyone was injured or unalive, so glad that everyone is safe. Otherwise, honestly, I hope that those two girls are all right. And if it means that particular people in power don't like hearing that, fair enough. I can't argue with that. I understand if you don't like hearing particular lines that paints one side as very bad. Whilst everyone's entitled to their own opinions, I think there are far worse situations. There are far worse offences that people should be arrested for besides recording whatever is going on, like just recording an explosion. Now, to say whether they're involved or not, that's not for me to decide. Personally, I don't see how they could have influenced that in any way. That's just me. However, anyone involved, I hope they're safe and they can continue living their lives because from what I've read, they were just recording a video and people can interpret it any way they like. Honestly, I think there's likely worse incidents. There are far worse scenarios than just recording massive explosions with underlying messages that really paint society as weak, undisciplined, and underutilized. There are far worse cases how people can be who there are far worse cases that someone's reputation could be tarnished. Lidl beats Aldi, Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's, and Morrison's to cheapest supermarket. In July 2025, Lidl regained its status as the UK's lowest cost supermarket by edging out Aldi in a price evaluation of 76 commonly purchased grocery items. Lidl's lead follows a prolonged price competition amid ongoing UK inflation rises and economic pressures, including a recent 5.2% grocery inflation rate. The Which analysis found Lidl's average basket cost £128.40, 85 pence cheaper than Aldi's £129.25, while larger shops favoured Asda and Waitrose remained the most expensive. Rena Fraz of Which emphasised that selecting one supermarket instead of a different one has the potential to reduce your grocery bill by up to 25%, highlighting notable savings for customers. The shift suggests families adjust shopping habits to save money amid the cost of living crisis, while government and experts acknowledge more action is needed to tackle inflation. And of course there is, yes, absolutely. But whatever their plan to cut down on inflation, it's not enough. You can't just make produce cheaper, affordable, and raising monthly or weekly wages for everyone. You gotta tackle the root cause. Well, the root causes is anyone's guess, or at least there are different factors that people will bring up saying, we have to do this to ensure that prices to buy goods and services are affordable for everyone. But you can't just focus on one factor, you have to focus on multiple. But anyway, that's just me, with whatever little knowledge I have about the economy and inflation going up and down. Great work, Lidl, on being affordable for many Brits across the country. Hopefully that this trend continues, and hopefully all other supermarkets in the UK continue to ensure that produce is affordable, even when wages are not increasing as frequently as they should. Do what Poland does. Increase the cap based by a certain percentage that reflects the yearly currency exchange rate. Or some, I'm not sure how to describe it, but I've heard a while ago that how Poland increases their salary cap or their weekly wage, they increase it a small amount at a certain percentage based on what what they believe the inflation rate would be for the following year. So that way, no matter how bad inflation gets in Poland, at least the Polish people will get a decent pay to ensure they can afford anything that they possibly need or want, but mostly need. I think a lot of people would be surprised how many countries may not be doing that at the moment. Even as a few, it's not enough. There could be other reasons for that to not happen. But personally, I think that should be the case on how to increase weekly wages. NASA acting chief Duffy issues directive to speed up moon reactor plans. NASA will fast-track plans to build a nuclear reactor on the moon by 2030, according to US media. Mr. Dovey called the proposals from commercial companies to build a reactor that could generate at least 100 kilowatts of power. The NASA program called Fission Service Power will rely on microreactor technology, according to Duffy's directive. I've heard about this quite recently, and I think I was watching this with my dad, and he asked, how? How on earth is that going to be possible? How are they going to do that? And you know what? He's right. He makes a good point. Like, it's been decades since anyone has even attempted to go to the moon. How do you expect us to, how do you expect people or expect experts to come up with a solution on how to get a power reactor to operate on the moon and whatever power it generates, how is that power going to be transferred? Where is that power going to be directed towards? Well, Earth, obviously, but how? Unless there's some kind of technology that we don't know of, which is far advanced beyond our own comprehension, I'm not sure. I understand that, I understand there is information about life in space, or whatever life is there in space, and just understanding the solar system and the universe and whatnot. However, until there is some plan for astronauts to return to the moon, and I think I think the first moon landing, someone recorded that and sent it back to Earth, presumably, and I think that was the biggest moment we've heard, like at a global pop cultural scale. Even if we do, even if there is an attempt to land on other planets again, there are so many questions, not just that I have, but a lot of questions other people will be asking. Because different planets have different terrains, different atmospheres, and different ways of how to approach said planets. Because you never know if the planet itself would be safe to even walk on. Who knows? There are so many questions, but we won't get to those questions until enough people, not just the media, but also the public, raises them for themselves out of genuine curiosity. Personally, I'm all for space exploration and going to other planets, explore the universe as it is. However, honestly, I'm not fully convinced that even decades after the moon landing by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, I don't think whatever technology that is commercially available is even viable enough for commercial air travel or commercial space travel, let alone space travel for research purposes. Like, people talk about going to other planets, going to Mars, and the moon, of course, but no one ever asks what's the logistics of getting groups of a huge amount of people onto rockets. What's the rockets even going to look like for commercial air travel? And what's the facilities going to be in place to ensure that space travel is even possible to go from Earth to whatever planet is even habitable? Because not all planets are habitable. There'll be gases that could possibly kill us within minutes or even seconds. Maybe some gases could kill us very slowly. A very slow, painful death, which is very, very dull, personally. Who knows? There is so much questions, and of course, I know experts will have the answers, but we won't get to those answers because it's not important to discuss that yet. And if we do get answers, not everything will be answered because either A, people may not care about what information is being told, or B, if people found out about that information, will that turn people off from space travel in general? It's down to the people. Whatever opinions people take from that is down to them. Someone will find a way eventually. Warning to UK over rise of virus that can cause serious breathing problems. Health experts warn that RSV can cause serious breathing problems. and urged the UK to prepare following record Australian cases. Australia has seen increased RSV cases over winter, suggesting likely spread in the UK in the coming months, NHS officials said. Last week, the UK HSA reported the RSV vaccine is 82% effective for older adults and prevents 72% of neonatal hospital admissions in pregnant women. Over 1 million adults aged 75 to 79 will be invited for RSV vaccination, with plans to expand to up to 150 community pharmacies, NHS England has said. Pregnant women from 28 weeks are advised to get RSV vaccine, and from late September, NHS England will introduce for high-risk preterm infants. Okay, so before anyone asks, no, it's not a sign that we're going to go into lockdown again. But of course, there's going to be some kind of scare again to convince us that we have to follow certain advice. I'm not against following medical advice because we all know how important it is to stay healthy, and I certainly know how important it is to get the treatment people ever so necessarily need. But after just reading this, there will be a few that'll look back to COVID 2020, the reports about the effectiveness of the vaccines that they say was to prevent the symptoms or prevent us from even getting sick from COVID to begin with. There are some reports have said that there have been symptoms in those vaccines. However, the severity of those symptoms turn out to be pretty dire. Like, this is far more like those symptoms actually are a lot more serious than people made them out to be. And that's just what I've heard from multiple sources. And it does not matter which source it is. There's a handful of news sources, and there's a handful of people that are speaking about their experiences regarding the situation at that time. So you can ask anyone, and they will say straight from the get-go. All I ask is that if there is another health emergency, I hope, genuinely, I can't stress enough, I hope that anyone that is vulnerable to get sick from any virus are given strong health, very durable immune systems to get through hard times. Because 2020, it was absolutely awful. The amount of lives that were lost, it's devastating. No one should go through that ever. However, with health emergencies as serious as this, of course, there's going to be a high levels of urgency for people to get vaccines, stay healthy, get the treatment that you need, and hopefully try to try to ensure that others do not get infected if there are clear signs. I don't I don't think there's any other way to describing or expressing my thoughts. It's very complicated to talk about whilst trying to stay healthy and get the treatments you need, but at the same time, don't just follow orders. There has to be a point that you have to ask questions about how effective it is, what will come from taking such treatment, is it a high risk of certain concerns, health related concerns, and what to do if that happens. Because in the next few years, after certain rollouts during health emergencies, there will be news reports about the effectiveness and how it has affected people. That I will say. That there's no other way to there's no way of describing or expressing or at least telling the situation at hand. Anyone can take anything from this. But it's important to stay healthy, get the treatment you need, but still, do ask questions if absolutely necessary. Because a lot of people rely on the healthcare industry or healthcare sector to ensure that people live long, healthy lives. if there's even a tiny mishap or technicality error regarding prescription treatments or dosage of said prescription treatments, there will be lots of physical problems that could have easily been avoided, but for particular reasons that may not have been mentioned before, that is why it has led to that. So it's important that people are careful about treatments that they get, but also ensuring that they get the healthcare and the treatments they certainly need to ensure they can continue living their lives. Because everyone knows how important it is that we stay healthy, and we are not ridden of any viruses or diseases that could limit our physical ability to live our lives. Calvin Harris and Vic Hope announced birth of baby boy with adorable name. Let's see what it is. Calvin Harris and Vic Hope became parents to their first son, Mika, on July 20th, 2025, during a home birth in Ibiza. The couple, who married in 2023 after getting engaged in May 2023, announced Vic's pregnancy in April 2025 and her maternity leave in May. Vic gave birth at home in an inflatable pool, and both parents shared photos and messages on Instagram, celebrating the arrival and their private family moments. On August 4th, Calvin expressed their deep admiration for his wife's remarkable strength and innate wisdom, while numerous industry colleagues and fans sent their congratulations to the couple. Their son's birth marked a new chapter as Vic took maternity leave from BBC Radio 1, with implications for the couple's public and private life balance. Good for them. Nice to see that both Calvin Harris and Vic Hope have brought new life to their world. That's great. That's nice. I don't, it's just great, honestly. I can't express that enough. I can't stress enough how great that is, in my opinion. So, yeah. Now, it's down to them if they want to have another one, but I think it's too soon. Too soon. Give it a year or two, if they want to. But of course, congratulations to Calvin Harris and Vic Hope on the new baby boy. And hopefully, more stories come about in the next few years. For something similar, a company that recently hired Donald Trump's son stated that it hoped to benefit from federal grants and incentives linked to their father's position. After an inquiry from the Associated Press, the company revised the document and removed the statement about federal funding hopes. Lawyers claimed that the original inclusion of the grant statement was a mistake made by a copyist. Caitlin Clark, an expert in government ethics, criticized the action, stating it was an attempt to exploit public office for private profit. You know, at some point during Donald Trump's tenure as President of the United States, I heard. Now, I can't say this was coming, but when it happens, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. I would not be surprised if there was any attempt whatsoever for given Donald Trump's position of power to give some benefit to Donald Trump's sons, similar to Elon Musk, given that he was running the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE for short, to cut down on government expenses, only to find out that there were some aspects of the government cutting that gave some kind of benefit to Elon Musk's companies, which I cannot argue is a massive conflict of interest. I've said this the moment I've heard that Elon Musk was going to be at Trump's cabinet at the time, that it is a massive conflict of interest. Like, if you're in such a position of power, how how could someone not do that to ensure that they are safe for life? they secured the bag. They can retire off that money. I won't blame them, but I still wouldn't advise it whatsoever. Because, that's just greedy. And a lot of people, if they found out about it, they will call you out on it. That's just important. In the school of life, no, in the game of life, that whenever someone is in a position of power, they'll do what they can, given the powers that they have, to ensure that by the time they leave their position, they are secured. They got the bag, and they can officially live the rest of their lives without having to worry about 9 to 5, getting the next monthly paycheck, weekly paycheck, how often people get paid. It's inevitable. I'm not surprised that we're going to hear a story like that. And it's not the first time either, because, well, Doge. Enough said. Comedian Matt Rife has announced he bought the Connecticut house and oculus museum that belonged to the late Ed and Lorraine Warren, whose paranormal adventures are featured in The Conjuring, Annabelle, and Nun horror movies. I have officially purchased Ed and Lorraine Warren's home, and oculus museum, including being the legal guardian for at least the next 5 years of the entire haunted collection, including the Annabelle doll, with my good friend at Elton Casti. Rice posted on Instagram, along with a photo of him and Casti posing with the supposedly demonic doll, and other photos of the Warrens at home. If you know me, you know I'm obsessed with the paranormal and all things haunted. You also may know the Conjuring films are my favorite scary movies of all time, so I'm incredibly honored to have taken over one of the most prominent properties in paranormal history. Ed and Lorraine Warren arguably put demonically and paranormal into the mainstream and are the very heart of some of the most famous haunted stories of all time. The Conjuring House, Amityville, Horror, etc. Rife said he and Casti plan to open the house for overnight stays and the museum for tours sometime in the near future. Wow, that's quite the story. I heard a while back about the Annabelle doll and the scariness behind it, the horrors. Oh, the horror! Wow, man, Matt Rife is living the life, that's for sure. Well, it's nice seeing that people got what they want and they achieved their life. I'm not sure if this was his lifelong dream, but of course he's a horror film fan, so getting that house that that was a that's the location of many of the most prominent horror films, why wouldn't any horror film fan get a hold of that house? Of course, it's more than just a house. It has made history and has been the location of many iconic horror films. I don't watch many horror films, so good for Matt and also Cassie on getting the house. I'm not sure what else to say because they 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 got a hold of the house. I think that's an achievement enough for them. But hopefully, more great things come out of the house, at least with the tours. Because, well, I mean, of course, a lot of people are wanting to look at the house, given the influence and the movies that house has been featured in. So the hopefully the accessibility will continue in the next coming years. Lithuania asks NATO to bolster air defenses after cross-border drone incursions. Lithuania has called on NATO for urgent support to strengthen its air defenses after discovering a Russian drone carrying explosives had violated its airspace last week. The drone, found in a military training area near Vilnius, was successfully neutralized, prompting concerns over escalating threats in the region. Lithuania on Tuesday asked NATO for immediate measures to bolster its air defenses after revealing that a Russian drone that flew into the Baltic state last week was carrying explosives. Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys said he and Defense Minister Dovile Sakhalin had written to NATO Chief Mark Rutte to ask for immediate measures to enhance air defense capabilities in Lithuania. Writing on Twitter X, Budrys said a Russian military drone violated Lithuanian airspace on July 28th. The drone, which was spotted by eyewitnesses over parts of the country's capital, Vilnius, was eventually found in a military training area on August 1st. Prosecutor General Nida Gruskin said it was carrying an explosive device, which was successfully neutralized by Lithuanian armed forces specialists at the scene. One of the main theories of the investigation is that the unmanned aircraft accidentally entered Lithuanian territory. I would like to stress that other theories are being investigated in parallel, she said. Officials believe it to be a Russian-made Gabera drone, a type usually used as a decoy in Russia's strikes against Ukraine. This marks the second such incident in less than a month. Similar airspace violations have also been reported recently by other allies, Budrys said. The threat is real and growing, he said. Budrys said neighboring Belarus, a key ally of Moscow, had a responsibility to prevent such incidents. If Belarus fails to take action to minimize the potential damage on our side, Lithuania will respond with political and other measures, he said. Yeah, don't mess with NATO. You do not mess with NATO. Not that I'm defending them, but people don't know the power that NATO has. Mainly because of funding from the US. Like, where would NATO be without the US? But as it stands now, with the US in NATO, you can never be too careful these days. Personally, I'm just sick and tired of hearing about interventions, entering other people's space. Isn't that already clear enough? How clear should those boundaries be to anyone? When I see stories like that, I just don't get how people just accidentally enter other people's territories without people knowing. And what were they doing entering that space to begin with? There are some things that just don't add up. Something will be resolved. Not soon. It won't come soon enough. It won't come soon enough, unfortunately. But something will happen eventually. So to anyone in Lithuania, Russia, Belarus, or other neighboring countries around them, stay safe, folks. You're gonna need it. On August 5th, 2025, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark jointly committed $500 million to support Ukraine by providing US weaponry through a NATO-coordinated program. This contribution comes in response to Russia's large-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and is coordinated through a recently introduced framework designed to streamline the provision of military aid to Ukraine. The aid comprises US stockpiled Patriot missile components, air defense equipment, anti-tank weapons, ammunition, and necessary spare parts designed to address Ukraine's critical military demands. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte expressed his appreciation for the Allies' prompt work in launching this initiative, while Zelensky described it as a significant step toward establishing lasting security throughout Europe. The donation aims to strengthen Ukraine's defense amid intensified Russian attacks and supports broader European security by accelerating delivery of critical military aid. Now, this is a hot take. It may not be for everyone. Fair enough. The moment Russia announced they were going to send the military into Ukrainian territory, and a lot of countries in Europe and the US, Canada included, when they announced they were going to send aid to Ukraine, fair enough. I was all for that because Russia has a big enough military to do what they can. Ukraine barely has diddly squat. But now, hearing more about the aid that Ukraine is getting, I'm not saying stop the aid. I'm not telling people to stop providing support, but I will say I think there will come a point where the aid that Ukraine is getting becomes less valuable. Not just how frequently big, powerful nations support Ukraine, but because of how Ukraine has managed to use that aid, not just to provide strength, not just to strengthen their military, which is already a big enough priority for them, because Russia is not giving Ukraine such a break. But whatever money is left after providing military spending, I've seen that there have been a lot more construction projects in Ukraine lately. I'm not saying that the Ukrainian government are using foreign aid to fund said construction projects, but I do wonder how is it have and this is not just Ukraine. There's so much construction projects going on around the world, whether it be in the UK, United States, somewhere in South America, and even in Africa, there are construction projects. Not big high-rise buildings, but someone building something, whether it be apartments, businesses, etc. However, looking at Ukraine alone, their construction projects, whatever they're building, wow, it's just amazing. Loads of new apartments, certainly a few businesses around every corner, well, almost every corner. I mean, good for Ukraine for providing providing more homes and businesses for the people in the country, even when there is a war going on. But now, the question that's really on my mind, it's a what if, hypothetically, what if Russia didn't enter Ukraine? And if there wasn't a conflict between Ukraine and Russia, countries wouldn't have a reason to send foreign aid. And if Ukraine wasn't to receive foreign aid because there was not a conflict that Ukraine had to fight off, since Russia hypothetically didn't enter Ukraine to begin with, would these construction projects in Ukraine happen? And if construction projects in Ukraine were to happen, would they be at a scale where they could easily build multiple 20-story apartment blocks, multiple multi-purpose buildings, whether in city centers or in remote areas in the country? And if there's a massive difference between the infrastructure of Ukraine with the foreign aid that they're getting and whatever infrastructure Ukraine would get without it, they're still gonna. It's certain that Ukraine is still gonna build new apartments and new businesses all around the nation. Like this is not exclusive to Ukraine. Every country around the world, even in Africa, even countries in Africa, are always building something brand new, even with limited funding from their governments. They're still building something. But the scale of Ukraine, I just find it impressive. Of course, I have a feeling that risk would say they're abusing foreign aid to strengthen their own economy. And you know what? That could be true. But nonetheless, there's no arguing that what Ukraine is doing in terms of construction is pretty impressive. So I will give them that. I'll give Ukraine credit for what they're doing and what they're building, despite them still being in conflict with each other, or at least being in conflict with the Russian military. You don't often see nations pulling such a move off like that. It's very rare. Great Barrier Reef suffers worst annual coral decline in 39 years. On August 6, 2025, the Australian Institute of Marine Science reports warned the Great Barrier Reef suffered its most widespread bleaching on record after surveying 124 reefs between August 2024 and May 2025. Amid escalating climate pressures, the Great Barrier Reef experienced its most extensive bleaching due to climate change-induced heat stress, tropical cyclones, and crown of thorns starfish last year. Along the southern branch, coral cover declined from 38.9% to 26.9%, nearly one-third due to climate change-driven bleaching. Coral scientists warn that recovery could take years and depends on future coral reproduction and minimal environmental disturbance, Dr. Mike Emsley said. Amid the reef's decline, Mr. Richard Leck, WF, warned some reefs are beyond recovery and urged rapid greenhouse gas emissions reduction and Australia's upcoming Paris climate targets. Yeah, so it's very unfortunate. And actually, there's a picture from Getty Images looking at the Great Barrier Reef, the state that it is in today. It's just so sad. It's very bleak and bland. No coral reefs should ever be like that. But yeah, here we are. And whilst I do have my opinions on climate change, that is mostly beyond our control. And if there is some kind of control with climate change, no matter how hard people try to reverse whatever negative effects is coming from climate change, those effects are still inevitable. That is something you don't hear often. That is something not many people will tell you. Because when people talk about climate change, they will say, we have to do this by 2020 something, or else all the iceberg's gonna melt. And then that said year, 2020 something comes about, and the icebergs are still there. And even they'll argue there's a slight change, which it is true, there's some change to the ice. It's not as bad as what people make it out to be. Honestly, I'm just sick and tired of the doom, gloom, and the fear mongering that revolves around climate change. I'm not going to argue that climate change isn't real. Our climate has been changing for many, many centuries. It's just there are aspects of it that we cannot change. And even when there are more people being born on this planet, and more people means more carbon dioxide being emitted into the air, you can't tell people to limit how much someone eats. You can't limit how far people should travel. You cannot limit people's freedom of movement because there's a high amount of concentrated gas in the air that's apparently making the climate even a tad warmer by a couple degrees. Even if we did implement these changes in, say, the UK, countries in Europe, what about countries with hundreds of millions of people in population? If people say that carbon dioxide is mainly contributed from people because we emit carbon dioxide, you should be bringing those people, climate activists should be bringing those concerns to countries like China, the United States, Brazil, Indonesia, even India. Because these countries have hundreds of millions of people and they contribute in total the most greenhouse gases and the most carbon dioxide, contributing to what people claim to be climate change. That's all I have to say. I'm not going to argue about its legitimacy. I'm not saying it's not real. There are just some aspects of climate change that is far beyond people's control. And if we do try to limit what we eat, how far we travel, if there are people saying that is the answer to preventing climate change, that won't be enough. That is not going to be enough. And if it does make a change, what if people say, okay, we're good now, we can continue living our lives, we can continue traveling around the world, and we can continue eating meat or whatever vegan diet you're on. And then the problem will come back again as people claim to be. Actually, remember when we were locked back in 2020 when lockdown happened and a lot of us, for at least 2 years, were in our homes. There have been news reports that wildlife started to return, and you know what? That's great. But that's only because not many people were going out. Those people who did go out during lockdown are trying to get their shopping done or work in emergency service. So it's not easy discussing this, and it's certainly not easy living in very limited circumstances. But people have to understand there are aspects that not many experts will tell you because it doesn't align with the narrative that they want to push to people to encourage the masses to limit some certain aspects in their day-to-day life to achieve something which, although will be effective and could be, and it will be effective to some extent, that alone is not enough. We have to do a lot more than limiting what we eat and how far we travel. And that is it for the episode.